Hey everyone, I'm Nidoking, and this is Sinner Sacrifice for Redemption, the second playthrough, where I am not redeeming any of the bosses, just to see if there is a different ending. It's kind of weird. I've heard of redemption runs of games where somebody will play through the game, do a terrible job, and then play through it again using everything they've learned to try to get a better result. It's ironic that in this game, the redemption run was the first one. But today we're going to see whether all that I've learned is going to make my victory against Yordou any easier. I didn't die to him the first time, so I guess I should beat him and gain an extra life? It's the only way I could possibly do any better than I did before. I am at least fairly confident in my ability to beat all the bosses in a reasonable amount of time, such that I'm willing to record them in pairs as opposed to recording them one at a time like I did the first playthrough. Only taking on the second boss if I actually manage not to die. Figure even if I rack up a couple of deaths here, I'll probably go on and do Chanel in the same video. So one of the first things to learn about Yordou is don't be too aggressive. I'm kinda lucking out here in that his minions have not decided to attack me at all. Now they're getting started and he is already running away. I mean, I'd like to consider that a desperation mode, but that's really just what he does. Yeah, it may or may not be a good idea to just toss all of my lightning spears at him right up front. But I'm still mainly going for the parry and riposte strategy. Or at least parry and get stabbed in the face. Ideally, you want to lure him out of the pack and fight him on his own terms. I knew that before. But I also knew that it's very difficult to actually make that work. I'm also kind of practicing for challenge mode, where presumably I'll have to defeat him quickly before the next boss in sequence shows up. Naturally, he's not going to be the last boss in the sequence. I'm entirely sure that that's Angron, just because once the platforms have been destroyed, you don't have room to fight any of the other bosses. So he's finally gotten away from the pack. Deciding to go in with a greatsword so that in the few instances where I manage to hit him, I can actually do some appreciable amount of damage. Because I think this fight has been going on way too long, and he's not even halfway dead. Yeah, at the very least, that attack pattern, all of the minions seem to run straight into the center. So if you get to the edges, you can dodge them fairly easily. And I guess that time I was just a little slow on the riposte. I had the positioning right. Find a break in the giant wall of approaching guys, and get in and ever do any amount of damage. And I had nowhere to go. I think even if you manage to isolate Yordou, just the fact that he can summon a bunch of guys around you when you get tired makes the fight pretty near impossible. There, I got exhausted, and then I got trapped in the center of the ring again. And I was outside to start with. They actually surrounded me when they're supposed to be leaving no gaps in their defense for anybody to get through. That is a bad phalanx attack. So taking this one again, using a different strategy. Start by just running up, getting a couple of hits on him at the start, and he'll roll away. Ideally, you want him to roll out from the middle of the group so that you can isolate him more easily. And just keep using the same attack over and over again. But nothing in life is ever going to be quite that simple. Once he switches over to the Greatsword, it's frankly easier to get him isolated because he runs faster than any of his minions do. In this case, he's usually running away from you and keeping the minions between you and him. Not the best trade-off of damage there, I think. I did manage to get some hits in, which is what's important. But taking more damage than you can auto-recover is a bad trade-off. Fortunately, I do still have plenty of healing available. And I can sometimes get some ranged damage in. And really, you've got about enough stamina for one running attack and then a roll. So that's the pattern you gotta use. You also have to roll in the right direction. That's kind of a secondary concern. Learning how to time everything is probably the first thing you gotta do. I think he's going for... Nope. I thought he was going to do the phalanx this time, but still just... I think they call this the encircling attack. In the versions of the game that have achievements, there's actually an achievement for not getting hit by that. Like, once. Don't get hit by it, and you get the achievement. You also get an achievement for defeating Yordou without directly attacking his minions. I'm not really sure what criteria it uses to make a lot of the determinations for how you get those achievements. And I'm going to confess that first parry was way, way early. But his attacks don't do a lot of damage. None of the attacks in this fight, I think, do a whole lot of damage. It's mainly just getting surrounded by minions and taking about 50 of them at a time. So, even with the pathetic guard that you get from the Greatsword, it's still fine. Taking a couple hits here and there just to make sure that you do eventually get those riposts, that's what matters. And I think we're probably in the territory where I just keep throwing the spears at him until he dies. Which would be a really embarrassing time to die. I just need to get a good shot on him, really. Okay, fine. I tried to not do the cheap thing, but the game really just wants me to throw these things. Done. So the real moral here, know your limits. And know that they're a lot less than what the game really expects of you. So I think I'm good to take on Chanel in the same session. I've learned an awful lot here, and I didn't die against her all that many times before. Plus, I'm really hoping to take her out before she turns into her worm form this time. That was the big issue that I had last time. Not that the worm tends to be very difficult to defeat, but, you know, I'd rather not have to fight it if I don't really need to. So first lesson, because parrying is such an important part of the fight, I'm just going in with a Greatsword. because I can do follow-up attacks with it, whereas with the sword and shield, you don't get a lot of opportunity for that. And if she's in the middle of a combo, as long as I don't get hit by the follow-up attacks, I can sometimes knock her out of the combo with the stun effect from the greatsword. If you can get the parry timing right, it's really not all that bad. And I really don't know what I was thinking there. I can't imagine that people actually do this fight without the defense boosts and without the auto healing. So for anyone who didn't watch the challenge video, there's your freeze effect happening. And I'm pretty much squared away at this point. So yeah, that puke stuff will freeze you too. Right at the end of the fight. I'm sure I'm going to need a full stamina meter in order to pull that off. And I might also need to get the fire buff too. I mean, the attack that I do that knocks her into that final scream and changing into the worm thing, that already depletes most of my stamina. I don't have enough for the follow-up attacks that I need. But I think we're finally good here. Yep, you can tell I'm gonna win because I missed an easy parry right off the bat. And there I am getting hit by one of her arrows. I did at least manage to break out of the freeze just in time. Mainly to show you that it can be done. And I should follow up with a heal at any point where I actually have an opportunity to do so. Well, that's 2 parries in a row. I think that's more than I would normally expect to get. I've also learned, don't try to attack her while she's going for the flurry of arrows attack. It can be done, and I know if you hit her with an attack item, you'll knock her out of the animation, but I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do that in time. At least not until I'm confident enough to take my item off the healing and go straight for one of the other items. And here again, she's transforming, I'm already down on stamina, and I take too long. But it's really just a matter of being careful, remembering to dodge when he does that tongue attack because he jumps backward. Or I guess I should say she, it's still the same character, just in a different body this time. And you get stun damage if you hit it enough times with the greatsword. But there's not really a whole lot new to say about this boss. The strategy hasn't changed. Be directly behind it as much as possible. Go in for the hits when you can. And watch for the tongue. Dodging to the right, I think, is better for that, because it spins around the other way. But it didn't do a whole lot of damage to me. And I don't think that tentacle is ever going to be a factor, because it's just going to stay right there where the tentacle appears, blocking it every time. And again, while it is nearly dead, I've probably got enough items to finish the job. But I think it's actually safer to go in for the melee attacks at this point. Yeah, when I did the redemption, I didn't really appreciate the fact that she turns back into the human-like form when you defeat the worm. But she dies just like all the others. And indeed, if you don't redeem her, the spirit doesn't appear in the hub area, so you have no one to talk to. Which is only slightly less conversation than you get if you do redeem her. So we'll pick up from here with the rest of the bosses next time.